Fans of the horror group The Misfits can easily be split into three different groups: the Glenn Danzig era fans, the Jerry Only fans, and the Graves era fans. Now, my controversial take with the Misfits is I'm a huge fan of the Graves era. Um, when I was first discovering the Misfits, the um, the version of the Misfits I heard was the Graves era. I listened to American Psycho, Famous Monsters, some songs off of Cuss from the Crypt. That was to me who the Misfits were. Now I knew Glenn Danzig was the original singer and original founding member of the Misfits. However, I never explored that side of the music till about a year or two ago. So a lot of my nostalgia is towards the Graves era. Now, the Graves era Misfits consisted of founding member Jerry Only, his brother Doyle Wolfgang von Frankenstein, uh, with at the time new members Dr. Chud and of course Michael Graves, who was the lead singer. Chud was the drummer. The Misfits previously was made up of a core of Jerry Doyle and Glenn Danzig, who would depart the group after a show on the 29th of October 1983 in Detroit. It was terrible, and while there was a lot of problems before this point, this was the last straw that really motioned Glenn to leave. So essentially, the Misfits would disband and would just not carry on. Now, Jerry Only went on to continue trying to make a project work with his brother Doyle. So he formed. This is one of the cringiest moments in Misfits history. Jerry and Doyle created a group called Christ the Conqueror, which was a very Christian like punk rock metal group. Um, this group was made up of Chud. He joined the band around this time, and Jerry and Doyle. However, after a few years of that project not going anywhere, they were going to come back as the Misfits. There's some other problems around this time with Jerry and Glenn, but the main point is they get into a legal dispute. Glenn ends up getting the publishing rights for all the Misfits music that came from the first two albums, and music from Static Age, and anything around that era when Glenn was with the band, while Jerry maintained the name of the group. Now, in 1995, the group hired Michael Emanuel to be their lead singer. He would later go under the pseudonym Michael Graves to fit the horror theme of the Misfits. Now, the new Misfits would make their first appearance together on a film called The Animal Room, and it wouldn't be the last time that this group would really push itself to be a public group. They would appear in movies later on, but we'll mention that later. One of the my favorite parts about this group was that they appeared on, what was it? I think they appeared on WWE, or what it used to be called back then. I think it was the WWF back then. But this it's there's clips online of it. I definitely recommend go finding those because I think it's the most ridiculous thing. But that's another story on its own. There's also a really good video. I'll try to find a link to it and I'll put it in the description to a story about Jerry actually getting hurt on WWF. Now, this group would release their first album together in 1997, known as American Psycho. It would release to a pretty good positive reception, and it was a more different sound than what the Misfits were originally known for. So the Misfits originally had a lot more straightforward punk music with a more hardcore edge to it, based it wasn't even really about the horror aspect of the Misfits. Like the lyrical connotations was had its roots in horror, but the music itself really didn't. Like there like Earth AD is a good example. Like almost none of the music on Earth AD has really big ties to horror. There's obviously horror imagery and things like that, but American Psycho was very different. I mean, the title track's named after like horror classic American Psycho, and the song itself details images from that film. So you can see what they were going for at the time. Now, for me, I really enjoyed this record. I think for one, the songs like the songwriting got really good. Like it was more mainstream sounding. Like that's objectively true. Like Dig Up Her Bones for sure is the song that comes to mind when I think of mainstream punk. It's a very melodic song it's clearly designed to be a hit, but I think it's really good. I also think the title track's really awesome. I also like as a music fan and as a musician, I really do appreciate the instrumental intro to the album. I think that's really awesome and really fits the horror idea. Like that just seems like a staple of like old B movies and things like that. I also think that the new additions to the Misfits were actually really awesome around this time. Michael Graves, for this album, featured a lot more hard and rough and gritty vocals, along with spots for more melodic um, style of singing. Dr. Chud, like, by far is like my favorite drummer of the Misfits. Robo is up there for me. Robo was the previous drummer before Chud, but Chud is definitely my favorite. I won't get into his personal issues. We're strictly talking talent, but I do like one of my favorite songs off the record is called "The Shining," and it starts off with a really steady and fast, really cool drum beat, and I think all the fills that Chud does on this album are all really awesome, and overall the like as a drummer as well, it's all really fun to play. Like I really enjoy playing through this entire album, just because it's the drum tracks are just so good. Now in 1998, Graves would take a hiatus from the group. Um, I couldn't find a ton of information why, but I know that this was information I had previously, and for I there's a channel on YouTube called the From This. I'll put a link to his channel because I think he's the godfather of all things Misfits, and he could tell that story better than I can. But Michael Graves did depart around this time, and so he was replaced by Mike Hideous, and that is also a weird part of Misfits history is Mike Hideous because Mike Hideous himself was actually really cool, and he fit the image of the Misfits so well, but was let go of after the because Michael left during a tour, and I think what I remember what happened. Michael left the Misfits during I think a South American tour, and so they hired Graves to fill in for the rest of that. So and then once that tour ended, they just never brought back Mike Hideous. But eventually Graves would come back, and this is around the same time when the Misfits made a change from Geffen Records to Roadrunner Records. They would stay with Roadrunner for a while, and this would lead up to their next album release. The Misfits would release Famous Monsters in 1999, and this album also released to good positive feedback and would feature probably one of their most famous songs, if not like a top five famous song for the Misfits, Saturday Night or Crying on a Saturday Night. Um, for me, this was a really hard topic of debate because I go back and forth every day on this album. Some days I think American Psycho's better. Some days I think Famous Monsters is better. it's difficult because I think they're two different albums and they're hard to compare one another because, like, I feel American Psycho is more designed to show off, hit songwriting more than anything, because a lot of the songs on here stand alone as singles, like Scream and them, Scarecrow Man, you know, Helena is also one of their like best songs. I it it's difficult because when I look at American Psycho, I see American Psycho, The Crimson Ghost, The Shining, Don't Open Till Doomsday. Like, these are both very interchangeable to me. I think objectively, Famous Monsters is better. Um, Take that as you will. That could be a hot take. It could be an ice cold take. I don't know. Um, but I like I said, this was the album that really brought me into the Misfits. Uh, my brother loves this band, and so when I got into this album, I picked the most famous song that I heard about, and that was Saturday Night, and that was off this album. So this was the album that got me into him. So there's a lot of nostalgia and a lot of appreciation for what this album did for me and my love for the Misfits. But at the end of the day, this was the last album that would be released with this band or with this version of the group. And let's get into that part of it. So the Misfits would tour the next few years, making appearances in movies such as Big Money Hustlers with the Insane Clown Posse, and The Bruiser by George Romero. There's actually a really good soundtrack song by the Misfits called Bruiser, and that's my favorite Misfits song, bar none. Go check it out. It's amazing. But anyway, all this would come to an end on October 25th, 2000, when Chud and Graves, and I believe Doyle also walked off stage during the show, but Doyle didn't quit the band. Graves and Chud did. They did not come back, and that was the end of them. Really funny story. Jerry, at the end of that, he did the rest of that show by himself. Jerry only is such a man of the people that he saying I'm 138 with all of his fans by himself on bass, and I that story for me really solidified how much I love Jerry Only. Like, Jerry Only can be cringe, like, he can be, but I love the guy. He's a man of the people. By far one of my favorite music artists when it comes to fan interactions. But just wanted to get that off my chest. I do love Jerry. The Misfits would finish that tour. Doyle, I'm pretty sure Doyle played on that tour with the rest of it, but they would get people to fill in for Chud and Graves because they indefinitely quit. The last piece of media that was released with this group was like a demo take album called Cuts from the Crypt. This album featured unreleased songs and demos such as Bruiser and I Want to Be a New York Ranger. It's a really fun album. Definitely go check it out if you're a diehard fan or just want to hear some deep tracks from the band to try to get to know them. I think there's a lot of good in there. But Doyle would depart after he felt the direction of the group was going not the way he wanted to. And this would lead into the Jerry Only era with Jerry Only, Des Cadena from Black Flag, and Marky Ramone, previously of the Ramones, really leading into this new era. I might talk about that if there's positive feedback on this video and it gets views, and that'll show if there's really interest for it. But that's the short and long of it. I wanted to share the little short timeline of this version of the group because I do really appreciate the Misfits and this particular part of the Misfits because it really revived my love for punk rock. There was a period where I kind of pushed away from it, but the Misfits really put me back into it and pushed me further into it than I ever expected to. Um, but anyway, I wanted to say now by the time this video is out there, I believe my first Temptations video it's closing in on 10K views. It was at 9.8 last I saw. It's at 9.8 at the time of recording this. So that's really awesome. There was no reason for that video to get the attention it did, but it did, and I think it's really cool that a lot of people liked it. A lot of people watched it and really learned something. I know there was some misinformation, and I don't claim to be a historian. I don't claim to know everything. There's always opportunities for me to learn anything. So, like, when you watch my videos detailing certain topics, like, just understand that I'm not an expert. I don't claim to be. I just like to share topics that I love and topics that I like to think I know about. And for the most part, I do know a lot of the information I share. And I hope that it engages you to learn more about the things I talk about. And maybe you'll learn it better than I ever did. Um, so, yeah, we're going to keep uploading. Since I'm in college and we got things to do during the week, uh, the consistent upload schedule will be weekends. I'll try to get 2 uploads a week. Um, I try to record Saturday because I don't have time to on Friday. So I'll try to record Saturday, release a video Sunday, record Sunday, release a video on Monday. Maybe sometimes I'll get a video out on Saturday and Sunday, and if that's possible, I try to get one out on Monday. But that'll be uncommon. Usually it'll be 2 uploads a week. Yeah, I think it's really cool that people gravitated to watching my video. So I think there's an interest there. So I'm going to invest more time into doing this because I think it's fun and I like talking. you know, it's my favorite thing to share what I love with others. So thank you very much for everyone who's watched previous videos and are going to watch this one. I know a lot of people are going to assume I'm a Temptations fan channel. That's not true. I have a very wide range of music I love. Um, so there'll be a lot of difference here. The Temptations were just the recent topic on my head. I will be doing um, some more stuff with that. Like I do want to do a David Ruffin video someday. There's a lot of notes to be taken on that, so that's gonna be a while from now. And I do want to do a Clash video, maybe about a song, maybe about an album. There's not a real particular topic I have in mind for that, but I do want to talk about it. I also want to gauge the room and see what people want. Like, if album reviews are something that people want to hear. I don't particularly think my opinion holds too much value, but if that's something what people want, by all means, let me know. Um, but yeah, that's all from me. Thank you so much, and goodbye.